Hello and welcome to today's roundtable event hosted by Amicus Recruitment. As you're all aware, my name is Jordan Hayward. I'm one of our managing consultants here. Fun fact about me, as I've just said, not previously, always been from the UK, but recently relocated to Austin, Texas. I've been here 10 days and just settling in to the environment and new culture, I suppose. But yeah, quick intros to each and every one of you. Again, you may have had time to connect on LinkedIn and speak anyway, but I'd like to just introduce you all for the event. So first up, I'd like to introduce Hema. Hema has a wealth of experience within leadership, working at top tech companies like Oracle and HP. Hema has recently transitioned more into the SME field, working for Be Well Connected Health, and currently working for Tracer as their Senior VP of Engineering. So welcome, Hema. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you.
No worries. Next up, Chris. Chris works for, I would say, an outstanding health tech company in Valon. I've known about Valon for quite a while. 3 or 4 years ago, I think, or probably even a bit longer. They were a young startup in London, and I was always trying to poach people from there or break into the company. So I really appreciate what Valon do, and they're a great company. And Chris is a director of engineering at the company. So yeah, welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Next introduction goes to Esther. Esther transitioned into management about 7 years ago, at the time working for Carter, and Esther has actually just landed herself a new role at Valon Insurance. So Esther, really appreciate you joining us today, because I think is it week 2 of the new job, so it's probably a lot of information to take on board for your new role, and then taking the time to speak with us as well. So really do appreciate it and welcome.
Thank you. Yes, week 2, and very excited to be joining Valon Mortgage Servicing.
Yeah, perfect. Jaya is my next introduction. Jaya is the Senior Director of ZenBusiness. Again, I followed ZenBusiness quite a lot, especially I assume that this year has been a pretty hectic year for ZenBusiness, given the mega funding round that you secured last year, sorry. So yeah, welcome, Jaya. How's everything going over at ZenBusiness?
Yeah, it's going great. I'm actually the Senior Director of Engineering for the data team specifically, so I oversee all of data.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us today. And then finally, I'd like to introduce Josh. Josh also has a wealth of experience within leadership, and is currently the Director of Engineering at a small startup in Austin called LoudCrowd. I actually met Josh last week, and I have to say LoudCrowd sound like a really, really exciting startup and very intriguing as well. So yeah, welcome, Josh, and thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No worries. Perfect. So that's introductions done. So let's dive straight into it. So as you all know, the title for today's roundtable was Leadership Amongst Different Characters at Different Experience Levels and from Different Cultures. So I want to start off by almost putting you all in a bit of a scenario, and then the floor is completely open to start with, so if anyone wants to jump in straight away, then feel free to do so. But scenario kind of is, you step into a new role, or maybe you inherit a new team, whether that be through an acquisition or a merger. I want to understand what are the first steps you take in order to understand your team, both from an individual perspective, but also from an outcome in terms of meeting business goals as well. So I'll open it up to the floor, and whoever wants to kickstart with that one.
I can. I just went through this hypothetical situation.
Yeah, perfect.
So I can start with that. So I just joined Valon Mortgage Servicing, new role, new team, and one thing that I very much wanted to do, was lead with curiosity. So I definitely go in asking, a lot of questions, open mind, and just try to discover things through asking. I'm also really big on building trust, building rapport, And so making sure to have one-on-ones, not just with direct reports, but with stakeholders and with as many people as possible to start building, that trust, especially because I'll be remote. So start building the layers of trust there. And then to go back to like leading with curiosity, like taking a pulse of the team, sending out engagement surveys and really getting a feel for, what are the top problems? I'm not here to solve things immediately. I'm here to listen. And so that is definitely been my approach.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I like the leading with curiosity, new environment, new team, new work culture. You have to ask those questions and understand how each individual likes to work and what the stakeholders' expectations are as well. So yeah, I love that. Hema, I saw you unmute yourself. Did you have anything to add or any different opinions to that?
Very similar sentiment to what Esther said. Another thing that has really helped me transition into new companies and leadership roles is go with the mindset of not wanting to change anything, right? Listen, understand, and most importantly, be vocal about and celebrate the things that they have been doing well, and also get a real understanding of what the challenges are and pay attention to what they want as change, and also involve them in the process of any change, and so that they are a key stakeholder in the change itself, because the change is predominantly for them, because the change is already you, right? That's a big change. But then also recognize that change is something that they want and how they want it, and involve them in that process. So that has helped, in addition to what Esther has said.
Yeah, that's great. And Chris, I saw you've raised your hand.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to kind of add on both to what Hema and Esther both said. To make that a little bit more tactical, I go in with specific questions. So a question might be, what are our biggest opportunities? What do you think what is impacting your ability to deliver? Who are your biggest stakeholders? What's the most important thing you're working on? And I basically have like 5 to 6 questions that I ask everyone I meet when taking on a new team. And then I present that data back to the team. Like, these are the themes that I heard from you. This is what I mean. And I do this in a group setting. And this is where I think we should focus our attention. Are we aligned? So kind of going back to what Hema was saying, bringing people along for the journey. Like, these are the learnings I grabbed. This is the deduction I have. This is the thing I think is the next path forward as we kind of move to action, and want to make sure that they are bought into it. So,
yeah. No, that's great. Are these questions, you say everyone, is that both stakeholders and individuals within the team that you're leading and managing, is it?
Yes, yes, on both accounts.
Yeah.
I also ask, like, who are our primary stakeholders from the team members to make sure that they're aligned. So it's about making sure that everyone understands what the current priorities are, making sure everyone understands who the customers are. And if there is misalignment, then kind of diving into that and figuring out where to go from there with the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. And Josh, how about yourself? How do you typically approach understanding your team and the individuals and the stakeholders?
Yeah, I'd say one thing I like to approach it with is really a sense of yes, there are hurdles to be overcome, but it really establish that togetherness as a team, and let the specifically the direct reports, but let them know that you're here for them. That the reason you're even in this conversation is that you're here to support them, and you want to hear what's going well with them, what's not going well with them, and really establish that this is not I'm coming in to tell you to do things. We are coming together as a team. And I've worked on, at least where I've been, I've had the luxury of small teams. But with small teams, it's extremely important that everyone has the vision. There's no momentum without everyone going the same direction. And so that I would say that togetherness is an extremely important thing to establish early on.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. If you don't all have the aligned and the same vision, then yeah, it's not going to end well essentially, or progress well. So completely agree. And how about yourself, Jaya?
I was gonna say everyone went before me. I'm like, oh, and yeah, I'm kind of the same. So for me, the relationships is probably the biggest one. It's the first thing I focus on. I joke with my team, like the first channel I made when I kind of got into the role was like data feelings. Because I was like, this is the most important channel. You know, talking about our feelings, like talking about ourselves, right, as people. And then I made like the technical, like, you know, div data, internal, etc. So the relationships are, I think, the most important, and that togetherness, like making sure, I know in the past, like we've acquired, you know, companies, and like, how do you integrate new folks? And I think it's very important, like when a new company is coming in, that you do integrate them, and you know, have the remote hangouts and the remote happy hours. We use gather.town. We love gather.town. I highly recommend it if you haven't heard of it or used it. But we have, I think, almost like once a week, at least one of the teams in my kind of space, they'll have their informal hangouts in there. Sometimes they'll even have meetings in there.
Right.
It's a really great space.
Okay, brilliant. And I agree. It's all making sure you get to know someone on a personal level before anything happens with the vision of the team and the work they're doing. Jaya, how do you go about getting on that personal level with someone? Is it in the form of one-to-one meetings? Do you do it more in a team setting where you come together as a group?
Yeah, it is one-to-one. You got to have the one-on-ones. Early on, you know, the questions, I think, Chris, we may have been trained similarly. I think we used to work together before, but asking folks, yeah, how they're doing, like as people, right? Because it's like, yeah, how is work? Yes, that's one thing, but like, how are they doing? And, you know, identifying, you know, what's working, what's not working. Like, if you could change one thing, what would you change? And asking that actually every week. Also asking, you know, what's one part of your job that you hate? to see, like, you know, that sometimes is like an easier way to pull out the problems than to say, hey, what do you think should change? It's like, let's like reframe it, and that's easier to answer. But yeah, I guess I'm actually such a fan of, I guess, building relationships so at our company we use a tool called Donut. And it pairs people up and has them, you know, spend 15 minutes together. So our company grew really, really rapidly. And so now in like the data division, we have data donuts pairing up, you know, people randomly each week, and we do that manually. So, and just kind of making sure that, you know, people are connecting with each other, because in this remote culture, like, we don't have an office, we don't have a place to just, you know, get to know people by walking by. So we have to be even more intentional.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love the donut tool as well. I love the idea of pairing people together, because there's a lot of people in teams that don't get the opportunity or choose not to, but don't really get to know each other on that personal level. So that's brilliant. Would anyone do it differently? Would anybody maybe bring everyone together in more of a group setting first and then have those one-to-ones?
Are we still talking about like when you're first onboarding the team, or just?
Yeah. So when you're first stepping into that new position, like would you personally maybe sit down with each individual one-to-one first, or would you maybe bring them together in more of a group setting?
Historically, I've always done it first one-on-one and then bringing the team together. The primary reason for that is to make sure they get an opportunity to talk to you directly in case there's something you know, sensitive or urgent that they need to speak to you about, as well as just giving them that one-on-one FaceTime, which I think is really, really important in building that relationship, and then coming together as a team.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's great. I was actually reading a book recently. I don't know whether any of you have read it yourselves, but it's called The Making of a Manager by Julie Zhu. And she talks about implementing, well, she says that there's three key, she calls them the 3 Ps that every manager should focus on, and that's people, process, and purpose, sorry. So we've just kind of covered off like the people side of things. How do you then take it that next step and start understanding what the purpose of the team is, and implementing that process to achieve the team goals and outcomes? Hema, maybe have you got any ideas?
Yes, I think the first step is to convey the purpose, right? Or extract the purpose, or you may want to call that as motivation, and keep that as the forefront in terms of the higher purpose. And then Chris mentioned that, you know, doing one-on-ones first and then later on with the team. I think in my case that works when it's a smaller team, but when you have a large team that you're inheriting, then you kind of go do that in parallel, you know, having team meetings, as meeting with the team, as well as, you know, one-on-one. So during that goes to the process of, you know, how you want to, you know, roll out things, or how you want to capture information and things like that. From a people perspective, my philosophy has always been people first, which means you play to their strengths. And this also goes into that discovery phase of figuring out, you know, what they are motivated about, who they are as a person outside of work, you know, what motivates them, what are they passionate about, and things like that. Knowing a lot more about them as a person and them in a group dynamic setting also helps with a people first initiative. From a process perspective, there are multiple directions that you would want to address this by. One is process for the day-to-day efficient delivery, right? So that's more of a software development process, or if it's an engineering company, it's a manufacturing process and things like that. So those become really a lot more structural and mechanical. Then there is, you know, process from a HR perspective, people operations perspective. You know, what are the things that you as a company and the department are doing for the well-being and the success of your team? This goes back to benefits. You know, we have a engineering value called individual well-being is a collective responsibility. So it's not like one person responsible for themselves, but it's the team responsible for, you know, each other. So what environment are you providing, you know, to foster that well-being? Second, making sure that your people HR processes for well-being of your team is actually implemented, and it's just not in paper, right? So that's another thing that people pay attention to, and so you want to walk your talk on that front as well. And then as part of processes, we also have policies, right, which are really non-negotiable items, you know, disrespect, you know, security, breachment, and things like that. So those come under policies, and you want to have process around, you know, how you want to deal with, you know, situations that are not right. So from a process, there are multiple angles. As an engineering leader, you collaborate with your counterpart in the people operations to bring the best for your team to succeed. So I'll stop there. I talked quite a bit. So
no, that's brilliant. I love the insight, and yeah, I probably from my perspective, I hadn't really thought into that much depth around like you're relying on like your HR teams and other cross-functional teams and counterparts. So no, absolutely love that. Jaya, I've seen you've raised your hand there.
Yeah, we are really good at raising hands at ZenBusiness because
Love
we're a
it.
remote company, so we're always like, my turn next, and you can see who's in order. You said something, Hema, that reminded me. You said, finding people's motivations. I'm always telling kind of the managers on my team, I'm like, I want to find everyone's superpower. Like everyone's here for a reason, and if someone's here and they don't care, usually we don't try to hire people who don't care, but I feel like if someone doesn't care, that's the only thing I can't solve. I can't make somebody care, but if people care and they're not doing well, it's like, we got to go figure out what is their superpower. What is, is it the right problem, right type of problem, environment, whatever it is, but let's take that time, because then when you do find it, you're like, they just blossom, it's great to see that. And then the process one, I just had a quick statement because I joined the company. I was a very, very early employee. I think I'm like a 21 in the system. And now we're at like 550. It's huge. And I've learned that the process changes, I would say quarterly, right? Like as you grow, you're like, okay, those sets of meetings don't make sense anymore. New sets of meetings, new sets of, updates time. So it's just, it's interesting, like process, we have to be very, very agile to make sure that we can kind of evaluate and then change it and be able to, be effective at the next stage of our growth.
No, that's great. And yeah, like processes are always going to change quarter on quarter, probably week on week sometimes as well. So I understand that. Chris, I see you raise your hand as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on two things. One of the things that I don't think we've mentioned is when you're onboarding the team, making sure you understand everyone's roles and responsibilities. And if those aren't clearly defined, like moving to define those, I think that's really a mark of a healthy team. And when teams don't have that, they really do suffer. The other was a suggestion that I've done now with 3 separate teams. It's been really helping when you're trying to move to building that team culture and understanding people's motivations and understanding them as individuals, excuse me, is we do what's called an about me presentation, where the team member presents only what they want other team members to know about themselves, like, where they grew up, where they're from, hobbies, their background. And it's been really great for breaking down walls between, like, I've onboarded on teams that were not in a good, dynamic at the time. And that really helped each other see everyone as people and understanding their perspective and a little bit about their background. One of my favorite exercises to do with teams, and it's just very rewarding.
No, I love that. Do you do it in front of everyone? So do you present in front of the whole team?
Yes, they basically just create a slide deck. It usually includes a lot of pictures, people growing up, stuff like that. I have a very embarrassing picture of me with really thick glasses and big hair. So I like to include those. Yeah.
Perfect. No, I love that. And you mentioned understanding people's roles and responsibilities. So that's probably more on like the professional and work side of things rather than personal, I assume.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and often people have assumptions about what someone should be doing or what they expect someone to do. And if it's not clearly mapped out, that's where the friction is happening, right? Usually there's not a good, healthy sense of feedback in a team when there's that kind of dynamic. And so just kind of laying it out, okay, this is what we should expect someone in this particular role. This is what we should be giving them feedback on. And having that laid out makes it easier to do that.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Josh, what about you? You mentioned earlier making sure everyone's aligned with the vision and what needs to be done. You've obviously understood people from a personal sense. How do you then go about understanding people's roles and responsibilities within that certain team?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking through process here, and in my opinion, of the 3 Ps, it's definitely my least favorite. I would say it is that I people first, and then purpose, and then those 2 really help to define process. And I like to approach it, especially in the startup world. It's wherever you can get rid of extra process is generally a gain. Process comes in when there's when there's inefficiency or when there's recirculation of things that keep happening. And so the process is almost a necessity to just smooth out the road when you realize that you keep going in circles, right? And so I process itself is great when applied right. But I'm always one to be looking at how can we remove it? What can we remove? What was there for a time, to what Jaya said, process changes over time. What was there for a time and is no longer relevant. And so I think that's extremely important. And generally in my mind, to what Hema was saying, in my mind, I see process as in a lot of the project planning and a lot of the day-to-day software development work. Obviously, yeah, the policies and the HR processes are a little bit out of our hands. And so those, I'm not calling those bad. Those are fine. Those are what we're doing. But the ones that I'm always trying to look to cut down are the ones that are actually in me and my team itself, the ones that we've made or we've built over time.
Yeah,
so
no, that's great. I'm loving the hand raising, by the way. I think Jay, you raised your hand again.
Yeah, no, I just love the process thing that you said, because I feel the same way. My team knows I am like not anti-process, but I really if I make a process, that means like it's gotten so bad that I have to make a process around it. Like this is getting out of control. Everyone's doing kind of their own version of this, and like, okay, this now needs a process. But yeah, it's the benefit of working in a smaller company.
Yeah. And Esther, you've raised your hand.
Yes. On the theme of what both Jaya and Josh have said about startups and processes, things do change rapidly. So like being new to a team, it's always important, like, well, why does this exist? Why do we do things this way? And then also making sure that the team understands and that we're all aligned on like the reason why something exists, because it's going to change. Everything always changes. So if something's not accomplishing its original goal, change the process. The process should help us get our job done, not hinder us.
No, I totally agree. And it's something you probably have to analyze constantly as new projects come in and new business outcomes come in as well. So no, I love all of that. So Esther, I'll start with you on this one, given that you've just started your new position. Obviously, we've discussed getting to know people on a personal level. You understand how each individual likes to work from a professional sense, where people's strengths and weaknesses are. How do you then go sit back and reflect and think about how you go adapting your management style, firstly for the team in general, but then for each individual in your team? Do you reflect on each conversation you've had, or is it maybe something different?
I absolutely reflect on every conversation. And that's actually been a growth area for myself as a manager, is to realize that everybody is unique. Everybody has their motivations. Everybody has their experience, both at the company and at prior companies. And to really be able to know, for each person, what is their experience? What is their perception? What are their goals? And what do they need out of me? And I'll oftentimes just ask people, what do you need out of me? How can I be most valuable to you? Because I do like to highly tailor my management style and also what I'm bringing to the table. If somebody's looking to grow technically, how can I put them in touch with those opportunities? If someone's looking to grow more on the product side, how do I put them in touch with those opportunities? So definitely very much tuning to the individual and really digesting everything I've heard in the one-on-one and iterating with them. Because my first impression is rarely 100% correct. And so like constant iteration, constant feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And is it like an open door policy that you have with that feedback from your people that you lead and obviously stakeholders as well? Or do you tend to keep it quite structured and set up meetings? For just to
to scale, it oftentimes is helpful to set up meetings, set up recurring one-on-ones. I always like to really document. And I love that Valon's huge on documentation too, so that we can revisit things, we can assign action items. So in that sense, it's structured, but it's also open door. Like everybody, and that's why it's important to just know people and build rapport. Everybody knows that they should feel free to give me feedback, and then, you know, I'm also free to give others feedback. Just in that sort of like transparent culture, it hopefully is baked into the organization, and it's definitely baked into this organization that the transparency is a value. And so with that, yes, it is open door. And then sometimes like having more structure just helps these things scale.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Even just from like a recruitment sense, I think it's important to have that open door policy where, yeah, people in your team can openly give feedback or voice concerns or opinions of how we should be doing things maybe, or bringing new ideas to the table. But as well, I think it's important to have those in-place meetings and structured meetings to hash things out basically. So Josh, what about yourself? How would you go about adapting your management style to each individual within your team and stakeholders as well? Or not management, but yeah, relationships.
One area I've noticed I've had to do this recently is just in the area of praise. And I've worked with some employees that do not like being called out even for something good. Some of them just do not want to hear their name spoken in front of other people. And so that's just an area where I had to learn and adjust and realize, no, this person needs that one-on-one praise, that specific, maybe it's a note, maybe it's during one-on-one calls, or take them out for coffee and thank them for the things that they've been doing. But then again, other people love it, right? Other people say, that's great, you said thank you to me personally, but no one else in the company knew that I did that, right? And they want that kind of shout out. And so that kind of gets back to the very first thing we were talking about, which is you got to know your people. You got to know the team that you're on and understand who it is that wants what, and what is the motivators, what are the expectations they have, and play to that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really how you have to adjust your style, I would say.
No, absolutely. I think that's the same for recruitment as well. We celebrate our small wins, and obviously we celebrate our big wins in the form of sales as well and things like that. So, but some people hate the limelight of getting a big round of applause if they make a sale, and some people absolutely love it. So I completely agree with that and understand where you're coming from there. Jaya, how about yourself?
So I actually had a question for the team. Can I ask questions? Okay.
Of course you can.
I was going to share mine, but I'd also love to hear from everyone, like on specific ways they do tailor to their team. So thank you, Josh, for like that specific example. So for me, I have found that there are some folks who need deadlines, hard deadlines, some folks who need hard time boxes because they'll like overdo it. Like, hey, I only need you to spend 30 minutes on this. I'm asking you to do something. This is like the level of precision. It's 30 minutes or it's like a day, you know? So I found that that's helpful. And, oh shoot, I forgot the other one. Anyway, that was one. I guess other people can provide ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody else have any examples, or I'll open it up. Hema?
Well, sorry.
Chris.
Sorry. Do you want to go first, Hema?
Oh, sure. To Jaya's point, that I do agree that pretty much, falls into the bucket of knowing your team and their personalities, and you have to adapt your management style to be directive in these situations, and in some situations, I would say when there is a timeline that is affecting the business, then you are a lot more, in a micromanagerial situation, because you really want to, get that success for your business. And at other times, you just go into more, supporting mode, right? These are all things that are not time sensitive, and them straying away to do other things is actually a benefit, because then you're really giving them that thinking time to be creative and things like that. So really, situational leadership helps your team, but for you as a leader, it's a lot of mental work and constantly switching between different styles. And I think my belief is, as a leader, you being more flexible helps the team be focused and less distracted.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with that. And Chris, you were about to jump in as well.
Yeah, I think Hema, you used the phrase I was going to use, which is situational leadership. I believe there's even a framework called situational leadership too. One of the things that's really important to do when engaging with your team is constantly resetting expectations. So you may have like a really strong engineer who 99% of the time can knock it out of the park and doesn't need your help, but you put them in a specific context and they do. And so often what I do when I'm like passing off projects, I'm like, okay, here's the deadline, here's the context, reset those expectations. What else do you need from me? You want to be more involved? You want to be less involved? Like, you got this, bro, kind of thing? Or do you need some additional support? And do you need like leadership coverage because you're being tasked with other things and you need me to get those off your plate? Just doing that constant check-in and resetting those expectations and asking for that feedback, I have found being really helpful for setting people up for success and also keeping the relationship really healthy.
Yeah, that's great. Do you do that at the beginning of, say, a sprint, for example, or do you do that throughout? And I suppose, how often do you check in? Because I appreciate you don't want to seem like you're micromanaging or suffocating anyone. How do you set like time frames as to when you check in?
For me, it varies a bit. So like day to day, I don't, what kind of have that initial conversation about, okay, what do you expect from me as a leader? And then I kind of use that as my default. When I see things either kind of going astray, so like someone like on a task and it seems to be going on, I'll check in and say, hey, how are you doing? What else do you need from me? Or it's one of those high profile projects where, we need them to deliver, but we want to make sure that they're set up for success and we make sure that they have what they need. Are they stressed out? Do they need someone backing them up? What else do they need? Those are usually when I kind of reset expectations.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. That's great. Yeah, like I said, it's always a fine line as to you don't want to suffocate people and come across micromanaging, but at the same time, you want to have these check-ins to not only make sure things are ticking along and moving down the process, but also to ensure people are happy and feel supported as well. So no, I completely get that.
In my opinion, sorry, I spoke over you, but over communication, I think when it comes to setting expectations, is best to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. That almost brings me on quite nicely to a next point I want to cover, and this is something we've probably all spoken about for at least 2-3 years now, and that's remote working and remote teams. It's not going away. Conversations aren't going to go away about it either, and I think it's just the new norm now. But whether you've moved to completely fully remote since COVID happened or even before, again, I'll open this up to whoever wants to jump in first, but what would you say has been the most challenging thing about managing and leading teams that are remote first?
I can go.
Yeah.
Oh, Jaya had her hand up.
Oh, go ahead. I'll go after you.
I think the hardest thing is not being present with each other. And when I don't think any amount of technology replaces that. So I think that's that's the challenge. We do a lot of things to make it better. Chris pointed out, over communicate. That's one way that, you know, we make it better. The second one is there is this prevalent feeling of being left out because you don't see people, you know, you don't see the non-verbal, non-physical cues and things like that. So we try our best to maintain a central source of truth, documentation, meeting notes, you know, recordings, whatever, oversharing, if and that helps a little bit, and also making yourself available, you know, saying that, hey, you can reach me anytime. Don't worry about my calendar being, you know, fully booked and things like that. I'm always there for any conversation. So that helps. Also having activities, donuts. Somebody mentioned we also use donuts, so that's another one. The teams themselves gather every week or every other week, and they play games, have lunch together, and things like that. And we also have, you know, offsites where people come during holiday time to gather. So a lot of things, and it's a lot of effort, but it does pay back because people are comfortable being remote. They have the flexibility that they need in their life. So it's basically a small price to pay for a win-win situation.
No, absolutely. And I know from different sector, I'm in recruitment, it's very different to software and engineering, but when I was working fully remote, it was just so challenging because you bounce off each other's ideas that are in the office, you hear conversations going on in the background, and when you haven't got that around you, it doesn't like halt your learning, but it can potentially slow it down, and that's what we found slightly as well. So no, I agree with what you're saying there. Esther, I see you got your hand raised there, and then we'll go to Jaya if that's okay.
Or Jaya, you can go first because I know you were going to say something prior.
Yeah, or Jaya.
I can go. Yeah, so it's been, for me, really tough to go fully remote, and our company has no office. 3 things I've learned. So we use Slack. I don't know if everybody uses Slack. We use Slack a lot. And I have found that there are some people, and I think we're all engineering, so maybe you all have had this experience, but you know, engineers like to be very to the point, you know, brief. And sometimes when I see, you know, only 5 words, I'm like, are they mad? Are they yelling? How did they mean this thing? So there was like this one team member, it's like every time they said something, I was like, are they upset? And so I actually talked to them in person, and I was like, you might want to add some like emojis to your message just so people don't think like you're upset. And they didn't even realize it. They're like, oh, I didn't want to have like extra words and, you know, make this like a big essay. So I was like, so I don't know, that was like a fun learning. So now when people do use like very few words, I'm like, is this just how you type? You know, you type because you're trying to be succinct, like add some emojis to like make it not sound like you're yelling. It's kind of the joke. Only a few words makes it sounds like a yell. The other thing is, in our Slack channels, we've had so we use Google Meet and not Zoom, Google Meet. So we actually have like an office, so that this Slack channel for, you know, for like data science team, they can go and jump into that Google Meet. It's at the top. It's like, you know, just a one room, and you know, it's saved, and so people can go in there and kind of, you know, hang out or ask questions like, hey, let's go jump into the office and do this. The other thing I wanted to mention around Slack is, you know, with Slack threads, when there's like a back and forth that's more than, I don't know, 3 or 4, you know, messages, I was like, this needs to be an actual conversation. This cannot be I've seen some like 100 message Slack thread. It's like, this should have just been a call. We should have just spent 10 minutes talking to each other, you know, because it's like, oh no, I didn't mean that. No, you misunderstood me. It's like, we should still be allowed to use like our voice, right? And not just live in Slack.
No, absolutely. And I agree. I completely agree with you saying like 2-3 word answers. I get that even if my family give me a 2 or 3 word answer and I know who they are. Yeah, they just seem angry or mad at the world, and they're taking it all out on you. So I completely understand that. It's difficult to read people through a screen, isn't it? So, Chris, it's like talking to a teenager. Brilliant. Esther, you raised your hand.
Yes, I agree with everything Jaya said about Slack. I intentionally call out that Slack is very ambiguous when people say things, and I always encourage people to meet because so many things can be misinterpreted. So yeah, hands down to that. I wanted to add, like, I know that there's, a general thinking that with back in the old days in offices, like there were just spontaneous conversations and ideas flowing around. But I see remote in some ways as being more inclusive, because for every conversation that was in real life, somebody inevitably, was left out of that by just not being in that office, not being in that circle of friends. And I actually find like having things documented and publicly accessible in Slack allows for everyone to be included in conversation. So that is one, positive, I think, with having a remote friendly or remote first culture.
No, I love that. Yeah, just thinking about, again, my own personal experience, like we don't use Slack, we use Microsoft Teams, but we have an entire company Teams chat, which we share news about the market or things that have worked that day, or maybe a small win that they've had, so people can take that on board, where, yeah, like you said, Esther, that might not happen in person because it may just be a conversation that you have within small groups or people that you sat within earshot of. So no, I agree with that. Chris, what about yourself?
Yeah, one, I've noticed that you have to be very intentional about driving collaboration. So we have mobbing sessions multiple times a week where we bring the team together for knowledge sharing and pairing. And that's another thing, on a certain project we're saying, like, this is a really great one to pair on. It'd be great to like level someone up who doesn't know this part of the code base, who doesn't know this part of the architecture. So we make that part of our planning and as part of our story gathering, like, okay, we're going to take on this story. Let's see who could level up here. The other piece of it, just kind of tagging on to what Esther was saying, the really positive thing about this is, my team is actually spread out across the UK and here in the US. So I'm getting to work with people from all over the world simultaneously and pairing on things. And what I love about that is they approach problems differently. They see things that I wouldn't have seen, or they just approach it in a completely different manner because of a different background. So as difficult as it can be having so many people outside of an office, it's also not all bad, right? We're forced to work with each other, spread globally, and I think I'm a better engineer for it and a better leader.
No, that's great. I hadn't really thought about it like that. But yeah, I suppose different cultures can bring different mindsets and different thought processes. So yeah, that's brilliant. Josh, I saw you raise your hand a second ago. What challenges have you faced, or what's worked well for you in a remote environment?
Oh, I was just belaboring the point on Slack. And so that's why I lowered my hand. I didn't know if it was worth it, but since you called me out, I was going to bring up the point that I've really pushed in our company while we are still a 25-person company, to try to keep Slack channels, one, to keep the conversations to the channels rather than DMs whenever possible, and two, to try to keep the different team channels public. And it seems odd. Why would development need to know what's going on in sales? But it really does help foster that culture of hey, they're talking about something in the sales channel, and I have the ability to go read it. I don't need to. It's not part of my daily job, but it is that kind of one team culture of that I can understand some of the problems they're dealing with, and that therefore I understand when they're coming to us and asking us, please build this feature, I at least have some background where they're coming from, and that extends to all the different departments, and they can look in and see what are the things we're dealing with. If they can understand that our database is way overloaded, maybe we need to put time into the reorging that and making the database stronger. Maybe we don't need to do the tiny little feature that they seem to think is super important. So that's all just to say that the openness that Esther was bringing up of that bringing everyone into the conversations if they want to be really is an advantage. That was why.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And yeah, we have like you said, separating. We've got separate channels, but people have visibility over them. We have different ones for like different technologies we recruit for, but people can contribute wherever really. So yeah, I like that. Chris, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thought to this. One thing is, you start growing, you need to start thinking about your communication strategy and thinking about your signal to noise ratio. So I completely agree with the idea that anyone should be able to see and we should be transparent. It doesn't negate the need to have clear, concise communication with the organization, especially as it grows, because most people won't have context. So being very deliberate about that, I think, is essential.
That's fair. Yeah, we have designated the difference between chatter channels and actual like communicational channels for that very purpose. These are where you should actually care what's being said here. The rest of this is chatter. It's the noise. It is the overhearing the office teams working together. So.
No, absolutely. I'm getting a bit conscious of time, which is frustrating because I think this conversation could go on a lot longer. This is why I want to get back to doing in-person events in Austin, which we will be soon, so don't worry. But I don't want to keep up too much of everyone's time. So just want to kind of wrap things up. And I'll go round to each individual here. But if there was one piece of advice you could give someone stepping into management or a leadership role, or even a peer that's already in a management or leadership position, about how you go approaching like leading individuals and teams from different backgrounds and different experience levels, what would that piece of advice be? And Chris, I'll start with yourself.
Oh man, I thought I was going to have some time.
You were just top of the list on the right, so I'm going to work my way down. I'm not going to disclose who's next.
The first thing that came to mind is don't stop learning. Start identifying your areas of weakness as a leader, whether it be technical, architectural, or even business savvy. I've read product books. I've read, like negotiation books and all that. Everything I found that was applicable to my role where I felt like I was deficient. And really just make sure you are very intentional about that learning.
Yep, perfect. Love that. Esther, how about yourself?
All right, and that was great advice, Chris. I 100% agree with that. So one thing is, to lead with empathy, really see it from other people's points of view, see it from stakeholders' points of view, see it from, direct reports and everybody. I think, it sounds so simple, step into their shoes, but I've really been more intentional about that. And, it's just astounding the self-reflection you will get from that. So definitely step into their shoes. How are you solving their problems and what's their perspective on things?
Yeah, no, I love that too. Brilliant one. Hema, how about yourself?
Yeah, I was going to say growth mindset, but since Josh already mentioned that, and empathy, of course, is there. The one thing that I would say, in addition to what I've heard already, is to have respect for diversity of thought. When you are dealing with multiple cultures, backgrounds, that goes a long way, because everybody's culture is different. They are conditioned differently. So having respect for that takes you a long way.
Yeah, no, perfect. Really like that as well. especially when you're getting to know people on a personal level. And yeah, like you said, there's so many people, different people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different experience levels. So yeah, 100% agree with that. And Jaya, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the ones that hasn't been brought up already. This is kind of close to Chris's, but coming from the data engineering space for new managers, I think it's understanding the business, because so much of what gets you to management as a individual contributor is how good you are at the technical side, right? And so kind of shifting over to management, to leadership, like you kind of have to like look in a different direction. You're like, wait, there's a bit, like we're actually solving problems for the business. The business needs to make money. We have to make impact. And I think it's just better for people to kind of have that connection, in mind as they're leading their teams. Cause I think that will help kind of with the prioritization and yeah, just how they see the work.
Yeah. So rather than just seeing it from like an engineering perspective, overlooking it as more from the business side of things and a bit more from like a bird's eye point of view, I suppose, a way of putting it. Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you so much. And then Josh, you drew the short straw for being bottom of the list. So what would you say?
I would coach them to visibly experiment, to tell their team that they're making a decision to go a certain direction with something, but that this is an experiment. This is why I'm going this direction. But especially if they're new in leadership, everybody's going to know they're new in leadership. Taking that ownership into saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to try, and we're going to do it together. And if it doesn't work, we'll pivot, we'll change, we'll adjust. But just having that approach to things rather than having to expect that they have the answer and they know the direction they're going, rather coach them to take that approach of let's experiment on this together. And I think that creates a much better team environment.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So almost leaning on the people that they're leading, and the strengths within that team as well. No, that's great. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for those insights. As I said, it's 3 o'clock already and time's flown. I could talk a lot longer on this topic, and yeah, a bit got this over already. But I really do appreciate everyone for participating. Stay tuned for further roundtable events. I'll always keep you in the loop. If you want to join again, feel free to join. Hopefully soon we'll be doing these in person. Everyone's going to be in the Austin area, so it will be good to put some meet face to face eventually. So thank you again all so much for your time. I hope you have a great end to the week, great weekend, and I'll speak to you all soon.
Thank you. This is great. Thanks for setting it up.
Thank you. Bye for now. Cheers.